Hello, my name is Sister Pat McCormack. I'm a sister servant of the Immaculate Heart of Mary from Immaculata, Pennsylvania. My ministry represents the IHM Office of Formative Support for Parents and Teachers. What do I mean by that? Helping parents feel confident in their task of parenting. And by extension, passing on the work to teachers, principals, administrators, catechists, so that you in turn can be prepared to pass work on to parents. I hope that today you will find this session very inspiring and practical. Practical because it represents 96 families of parents who were identified as having children of positive self-esteem. And those parents came together on 5 different evenings to do research with me and to let me pick their brains for what kinds of things they think they did that had their child evolve a positive self-esteem. Again, by extension, I then did research with teachers. 4 faculties gave me 4 in-service days, and they sat in grade groups and with each other brainstormed what kinds of practices do teachers generally do that would help children grow in the ways of positive self-esteem. So our topic today combines the overflow of self-esteem, being resilience and self-reliance. The work is based on that of Erik Erikson, who was the first psychologist to give us life stages from birth until death. Well, we're only going to look at the life stages that involve the elementary school right now. And what is that? Security, autonomy, initiative, and industry. According to Erik Erikson, a child who eventually an adult needs to be able to negotiate these elements for himself or herself. Initially, of course, parents pave the foundation, and in time, teachers add to it, others add to it. But it's important that we understand these elements because these are the elements that form self-esteem. Security, from the earliest time actually in the womb, a child picks up that he or she is basically safe or unsafe, uncomfortable. Autonomy, around the age 2, the terrible 2s as parents will talk about, where a child first gets that sense of me do, I want, I say. Autonomy is a gift from God, meant for us to stand on our own 2 feet and be able to make appropriate decisions. Along the play age years of your preschool into kindergarten, initiative starts to kick in, meaning I become a self-starter, get my own ideas, get my own plans, work out my own rules for games. And during the rest of the elementary school years, ages 6 through 12, the main thrust is to develop industry, meaning the ability to stay to a task over time if necessary, but to follow through and finish what you start. Erik Erikson explains to us that these 4 elements are the root of self-esteem. They lead to a young person in their teens from maybe 13, 14 to 20, 21 to develop their own identity, to start figuring out who it is they are, who they want to be, and what elements have that happen well. Interesting enough, when I was a young person, the research said that that was accomplished, that identity formation was accomplished by the time I was 18 or 19. It was supposed to be in place pretty well. Well, today, any book we pick up will tell us about age 25. Why? Basically, because we're putting off the work of the foundation, these 4 elements: security, autonomy, initiative, and industry. That is the root of self-esteem. Now, today's presentation does not allow time to go into all of those. So I'm focusing on which one of those is also connected to being self-reliant and resilient. And that is the quality of autonomy. Before I move on, though, one commercial. As I was working with students, the students who were named as have positive self-esteem, they also did research with me. And at the end of their research, they said to me, and were able to give examples, that they see how their parents and or school help them in security, autonomy, initiative, and industry. But they said, for them, the most important piece wasn't mentioned, and that is genuine affection. I said, what do you mean by that? They said they want to know that the teachers like them. They said they're not talking about love because they know you love them, you have to. I didn't correct that misunderstanding. I just let that go on. But they said they meant that you like them, that you enjoy them, that you're really happy that they are in your class versus somebody else, that you appreciate them, and not for what they do, not for their accomplishment or lack of accomplishment, but just for who they are. So I throw that in as a general picture of self-esteem. But today we're going to be focusing on the second issue of self-esteem, and that is autonomy. Beginning at age 2, a child gets a sense of me. Up until age 2, the child, if they could speak, would explain to us that they thought, I'm just an extension of you, mommy, daddy, me. It's just one big we. But around age 2, it dawns on the child that he or she has a power beyond mom and dad, that he or she has a power of self, and that when he chooses to say no, the whole world can stop. Very early on, a child realizes that they have power and control over the adult, and it's a wonderful feeling to have. We hope that will continue to work out in a graceful way and become self-control. And that's the goal. So the second element of self-esteem is autonomy, meaning I have a healthful sense of standing on my own 2 feet. I believe that I'm capable of making decisions, and I'm allowed to make decisions. And if they don't work, I figure out why they didn't work, and I improve on that. Basically, that's what autonomy means. And if it develops well, I say if it develops well, this child becomes the young student, the young adult, the adult growing into age. This person becomes a person who is responsible, able to be self-controlled, able to grow out of problems instead of being stymied by them. You and I both know what happens if this doesn't develop. If autonomy doesn't develop, you have a person who's constantly needing someone else to solve for them, and who's feeling not good about themselves as they watch other students able to accomplish, and yet they are not. So we want to help this to develop in a child. The word self-reliance goes with this because as autonomy develops, I become self-reliant, able to rely on self. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when I was growing up, anytime we had a question in homework and said to my mom, Mom, this or that, she always began with, start with a dictionary. So I'd like to do that with you today. I'm going to give you 9 definitions that come straight from the dictionary for the word self-reliance. And at the end of the 9, my question to you will be, do you see a common thread? Is there one idea that goes through all 9 definitions? Because the slides are clear enough, I'm not going to read them to you. I'll just give you a moment to read. So the first 3 definitions. Continuing. And the last 3. If you are viewing this with other teachers, it would be great to stop and now discuss together. Did you see a common thread? What is it? What do you have to say about it? Well, because I can't depend on you to answer me, I'm going to tell you my answer to that. You, the second person, speaker, spoken to, spoken about, the person that we are of who I am. I am the common thread. In each of those definitions, it talked about the person themselves doing that definition. In other words, autonomy doesn't come from outside myself. You can't give it to me. By doing things for me, you don't grow it in me. Autonomy comes when I am put to the kinds of tasks that the definitions just mentioned. If I look at the dictionary for synonyms, we see other words that apply. So anytime I give children, no matter what age I'm working with, or myself or another adult, whenever I give opportunities for self-direction or to be self-sufficient, to be independent, I'm helping autonomy to develop in myself or the other person, whoever it is I am working with. So if you work with other teachers, I would suggest that you do stop and ask, what's one example? The examples are endless, but what's one example? And share with each other how you might cultivate self-reliance in students. Or if you're working with parents on the same information, asking them to come up with one idea to share with each other about how they can do that. And principals, you're not left out either. If you're a principal looking at this, what is one example that you can help your faculty to grow in autonomy? The bottom line is we all need to keep growing in it. And especially want to help our children who aren't there yet. What are some age-appropriate examples? Well, I'm going to give examples that parents gave and ask you to fill in the blanks for what teachers could do. For instance, if you're a preschool person, a teacher, a 3-year-old can choose clothing for the day, so it may not match. So they may look like, God help us, doesn't matter, as long as they made the choices and can live with them. What's something else you could do if you were the preschool teacher? Or a 6-year-old at home, they could set the table. They could learn to do some kind of an activity like that that allows them to be in charge of, I'm always the table setter. I'm always the Scotch tape kid. I'm the person who does the dessert. I'm this, I'm that. 8-year-olders, they can be collecting the trash. They can have a household chore that was on a regular basis in your classroom. Who's in charge of the pretzels? Who's in charge at this point? Who's in charge of wiping off the shields after school, etc., because of our need with COVID? Or the 10-year-older, or a 12-year-older, or an adolescent. Whatever age level you are working with, what are ways that you can engage the children in showing self-reliant behaviors? Because autonomy is exactly that. I become self-reliant. It doesn't mean that I don't care about others or depend on others, but I'm able to stand on my own 2 feet and start problem solving. Many an example, a favorite of mine to give. One day I had to do some doctoral study work, and I had to spend some time in a kindergarten. I am not a kindergarten teacher, so God bless those of you who are. I am not. So it was a little challenge. Anyway, I went into the kindergarten and I'm doing my thing. And within seconds, children are around me. They're pulling at me. They're tugging at my skirt. Lady, lady. Okay, somebody told me they had a cat that died. With that, it started all the stories of all the cats. If grandma has a cat across the street, and the cat they met on vacation. You know how it goes. Throughout all this, there was one student who wasn't paying attention at all to me, because in that classroom, the teacher had around the wall of the classroom, she had assignments, and they were supposed to be done in order. There were lots of fun assignments also, but you couldn't get to the fun unless you did the ones before it. So maybe you knocked off number 1, 2, 3, then you got the break for 4, then you did 5. All right, she called this the workshop way. This little child was over there doing her work. So that night I went home to the comment and they asked me, how did you handle the kindergarten? I said, oh, it was a disaster for me. I said, but I'll tell you one thing. There's a little child in that room who could run the classroom. And I told them about her. And then I made a joke of it. I said, we're saying there are not enough nuns at this day and age. We should dress her up in a little habit and send her in. She could be the first grade teacher. They'll never know the difference. Oh, and they all laugh with me. Well, here's the point. I stayed at that place long enough that those little kindergarten children became 8th graders. Who do you think got elected as the president of the student council? Little Maureen Marquess, the very little girl who was there doing her work, moving along, liking to accomplish. Don't we all want to have a classroom full of Maureens? We can, if from the earliest stages, we're helping parents know how to do that, as well as us doing it. It's never too late. That's the good news with this. It's never too late. The longer we put it off, the more work we have to put to it, but it's never too late. So very quickly on roller skates, because we have a little bit of time today. How exactly do you develop autonomy? The practices on the screen are what we would do for a child or for ourselves. Any person of any age who feels the need to become more autonomous, get a little more oomph, a little more ability to speak for self, needs to do these kinds of things. The exact examples don't matter, so I'm not going to give you a lot of examples because your example is as good as mine. What is common are these practices. So anything that allows that person that you're working with, and it may be your coworker, it may be your spouse, anything that allows that person to become responsibly independent, to govern self, not have tattletales or somebody else having to be on top of them, having a babysitter. Intrinsic self-control versus extrinsic. I understand when children are very little, yes, we do use prizes and smiley faces and charts. We do things to help them see cause and effect, to help them learn when you do this, you have control over getting that. Yes, when they're little. But when we're into school age, we shouldn't be bribing children with external motivation. Instead, helping them from internal, how good it feels to know that I just conquered that, to know that I conquered myself. But we're right now in the middle of Lent, at least while I'm doing this recording for you, it's in the middle of Lent. A great sacrifice, a great way of teaching autonomy. If I gave you the opportunity, do you want a glass of water with or soda or whatever the beverage is, with ice or without ice? Well, make a choice. One of them is going to be very much colder than the other, but you'll probably have less of the beverage because the ice takes up space. The other, you'll have more of the beverage, but you'll have less of the cold. Make a decision. Stick to it. Or perhaps a better example. I've used this with 5th and 6th graders often. I say to them, how many of you have a hard time getting up in the morning? Oh, hands raised all. Okay, here's an example then. Make your mind up right now that for tomorrow, not for the rest of your life, but for tomorrow, that when it comes time for wake up, however that happens in your house, you will immediately get out of bed and stand on your 2 feet. You may be so tired, you'll plop right back into bed. But for the moment that you were on your 2 feet, you will feel a sensation. There'll be like a in you. There'll be a sense of, I did it. That sense is what we mean by intrinsic motivation. Once you can feel how good it is to be in charge of yourself, then I don't have to have any gimmicks to try to talk you into doing good choices. Intrinsic self-control. Help this person, whoever it is, to grow with respectful assertiveness, to be able to speak for self, but in a respectful way that the other person can therefore listen and respond healthfully. Respectful assertiveness. And to be accountable, not passing the buck, not pushing the blame on someone else, but be accountable. Give examples of these, and you have your own recipe for building autonomy. It's really as simple as this slide. Not easy because it's day after day after day, but it's as simple to understand as this one slide. A maxim: do nothing for a child that the child can do for himself or herself. They can do it, you let them do it, give them a high five, give them a wink, give them an attaboy, give them, I wish I had 10 students like you. Don't stop there though, because that's false praise. Add on why. I wish I had 10 more students like you because I know that every time I have to have an emergency or I leave the room, I can count on you to take out a book and keep yourself pleasantly occupied. And I'm so impressed with that. Okay, that was autonomy the child showed. I'm just holding up a mirror, letting the child know that I see that you do these kinds of things. Way to go. Or another maxim: to value effort more than results. Do we want results? Absolutely. Every one of us want our results. Absolutely. But if a child or whatever person is looking only for the results, they're setting themselves up for failure. Because if you've lived as long as I have, you come to know that there are lots of things in life that you have no control over. You could do your best and you could follow the rule exactly and do the manual exactly, but it didn't work out. It still failed. Are you a failure then? No. But if you put your concern into your effort, it will pay off. No matter what the result, you'll grow because of your effort and the way you start changing your effort. More important that we care about effort than about results. Examples that the parent community gave was to use the word resourceful as a buzzword. They said they never problem solved for their child. The child said, oh, it's snowing again. I can't go out. I don't have anything to do. The parent didn't give them a suggestion. The parent in the research said, I think you'll find something. Let me know what you decide. Or, oh, I've got all the faith in the world in you. Or if one parent said the child continued complaining, and the parent would say, well, look, let's look at it this way. I have 5 major things to do today. Suppose I give you 2 of them and I'll do the other 3. Oh no, Mom, that's okay. I just remembered I have a project to do. All of a sudden they're doing the project. Use the word resourceful. Be resourceful, but have available the kinds of things you want them to be able to be resourceful with. They need to have those kinds of things and skills available. So in our classrooms, how do we do that? How do we teach a child to structure their time, also aware of the common good? If we are teachers, these are some of the examples that came from the teacher research. Only some. We only have a limited amount of time. But a public acknowledgement when a child is self-reliant. Joseph, thank you so much for turning the air conditioner on without being told. I really appreciate that. But you were losing your head when you did such and such. A public acknowledgement when you do see autonomy, because then others hear, oh, these are examples of what autonomy looks like. Coupon system. I'm not saying you need to use it. And personally, I do not use it. It's not my personality style, but I observed it in action and it does work. Meaning the students are given a certain number of coupons, paper coupons, paper tickets at the beginning of each marking period. And those coupons are allowed to be used for different things. The teacher and class decide what that means. But the way I've seen them, some of the things they've decided to do is if a child's homework was not ready for examination, they were able to staple one of these papers to it and be able to do their homework that night and bring it the next day. That's not my personality, so I would not be doing it, but it works. It's an example. Or they could use that coupon in order to be able to go out to the restroom, or they could use that coupon to have a free read time. Whatever you decide is going to be. It's a way of teaching children how to use their time, how to have choice and consequence, and become autonomous. Have students monitor. Whoever can be in charge of this, that's something else. Anything that gives them responsibility. If you are comfortable with working on contracts, having assignment contracts, so students are contracting with you for what they're going to do within what time span, according to what rubrics, and that they're getting, again, they're controlling a portion of their life. And of course, respectful assertiveness, teaching it whenever we can. Excuse me for running quickly, but we have so much to say. Along with this, a byproduct of autonomy developing is resilience. What do I mean by resilience? The same technique that my mother taught me earlier, I'm going to use again, only this time there's 3 definitions. Would you look at these 3 definitions and tell me, or tell yourself, or tell others that you're with, what would be the common thread? Here's my cheat sheet. Using those same definitions in red, I'm showing you what I saw as a common thread. In order for resilience to develop in me, it means that I have faced difficulties. It means there will be struggles in my life. There will be ups and downs. There will be successes. There will also be failures. Resilience develops when I face a problem and deal with it. Resilience develops when I come against the wall and I decide to either climb over it, dig under it, walk around it, do something with it, but not be stopped by it. If you think about it, what we see in the scriptures of Jesus in the agony of the garden, for instance, we hear him praying to the Father. We hear the prayer aloud. Father, I do not ask you to keep them, take this away from them, to take the evil away, but I ask you to keep them safe in the world. It's the same concept. I'm not asking to remove a child from all possible problems because that's not realistic. What I want to do is to help a child grow little by little for how to handle upsets in life. Recently, in my life, recently, I came upon a Dr. Seuss quotation, and it was, sometimes you never know the value of something until it becomes a memory. I thought, wow, that's true. At the moment, things seem so big. They seem so problematic. They seem like I'll never lift my head again. I'll never be able to smile again. But once they become a memory, the way I handled them is a memory of life or a memory of death. We want to help our children to learn that suffering is a part of life. That's what the cross is a part of life. But life is at the end of it. God has the last word, and the last word is love. Is this the way we're teaching our children how to overcome difficulties instead of trying to shield them from every difficulty? Synonyms for resilience: pliability, being able to be flexible, be able to be stretched. Offer this as an example to students to emulate, to strive for. When we see examples of it, comment on it. Examples from real life, examples from something they're watching, one of the films that they're watching in school. When you see an example of it, stop and make a comment. So we're giving them the vocabulary they need to be able to build their life. Because resilience comes not from avoiding troubles, but by walking through them, knowing that God is always with us. How can you cultivate resilience? Again, if you are with others watching this, I would suggest that you stop the film now and have a little discussion. If you're not with others, for your own self, maybe before you go to bed tonight as your head is on the pillow, how can you develop more resilience in yourself? Is there an obstacle facing you? Is there a struggle? Is there something that you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and take another deep breath and put your head up and start over again? What do you need to do in order to cultivate resilience? Learning from mistakes is another part of autonomy and resilience. Help the students to deal with the negative fallout of their actions. Don't make it the end of the world. It's not World War III. It's not the worst thing that ever happened, but it's a teachable moment. Approach all the mistakes as much as possible as teachable moments. And one thing you might do for yourself to help that happen is to breathe first. Do not speak unless you're ready to speak and are in charge of what you're saying. It's better to say, I'm too upset about this to discuss this right now. I need to pray about it, and I'll see you after recess. Or I think we both need some cooling down time before we discuss this. And when you do have the discussion, perhaps beginning with, may the word of God be in our minds, on our lips, and in our hearts. Let's ask Jesus to be with us as we talk about what happened in the schoolyard yesterday. Couch it so the child is in a safe place to be able to look at the mistake and make it a stepping stone. How could you improve this in the future? What caused this? What feelings were behind it? In the future, if you had that same kind of feeling, how could we handle it? Because the emotions are not right or wrong. They just are. They happen to us. What I do with the emotion is another matter. Am I teaching the child this way? What I need to correct, and in our position, we need to, I want to separate the person from the behavior. Look at the behavior. You, the person, are made in the image and likeness of God. You and the person are good and lovable. Right now, you're not too likable. When you spit on another student, they don't like it. When you talk about people behind their back, they don't like it. So you are lovable. Right now, not likable. So let's look at the behavior. What could you do to change it? Separate it and let them experience the consequences of their choices. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir. These are the pieces of information we need to be passing on to parents to help parents deal the same way that we do in school, to learn from consequences, not punishment. Punishments don't work because they're really either feel like too much of a whim, or they're too strong because we were hot under the collar when we said it, or they're unfair because some other student did the same thing 3 weeks ago and we acted differently. Punishments don't work, but consequences do. It allows a child to put on his own shoulders the blame. And what am I going to do about it? It helps children to name, claim, and tame their behavior. That is what helps you to learn from a mistake. That's what builds further self-reliance. That's what develops autonomy better. At the end of the day, the parents said, but I would say we should apply this to the classroom also, to bring unconditional love, acceptance, forgiveness. Don't let things carry over to the next day. Don't let them go home worried that my teacher doesn't like me, or this, that, something else. Wherever possible, bring closure today and send them home in peace. Discuss emotions and feelings. Give lots of examples when opportunities come up and the teachable moment comes up, do it. So we're even learning the names that can help us to acclaim what's going on in us. Give them perspective. The younger they are, the less perspective they have. And having taught even high school students and college students, just because they're bigger bodies or a bigger date, an older person, it doesn't matter. When it comes to pain and suffering, fear and loss, we go into our child mode. Help this person to give perspective to what's going on, so they're getting the skills they need to be able to breathe in and breathe out and trust that God has all things in control. There's much more I would like to share with you, and it cannot be in a 35 or 40-minute presentation. But with the NCEA is my most recent book called Resilience and Self-Reliance, Key Pieces in the Self-Esteem Puzzle. I encourage you to get a copy for yourself as a desktop reference, because in it, the kinds of concepts I've explained and more are well explained, but it also includes handouts already formatted that you could use for a teacher in service or for a unit meeting. Handouts already prepared to give to teachers on each of the topics I just mentioned, to be able to, for the teachers to be able to give to parents, to be able to pass out at a back to school night, at a parent meeting, in a weekly or monthly envelope, as an activity that you're doing throughout Lent or throughout Advent. There are papers already prepared to engage parents in discussing these very ideas. And there are also newsletters to be sent home to the parent. All these ideas are available in the book. For teachers, there are pages according to grade level, with activity after activity that the teachers in the research suggested. So you would find a lot of support there to be able to say, oh, check, 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 I do this. I don't do this one anymore. I do this. Oh, here's a new idea. Great support for yourself. For the parent handouts, they are a prayer opportunity as part of it. Good information, as brief as possible, because parents in the research told me they want our help, but they do not want multiple meetings, and they do not want to read big books. That's what they told me. So I try to put all my work into newsletters, so it's easier. That's one thing. It could be in the car. They could be reading it while they're in the carpool waiting. So handouts already prepared, Black Line Masters already prepared, that you could send home to your parent, or use them one-on-one for a particular child that you're talking with the parent. Or if you could arrange parent workshops, to have parents sitting in pods with one of the newsletters, give them time to read it, and then together, 3 simple questions. What resonates for you? Is there anything in this newsletter that resonates with you and your current practices? A second question, is there anything in this newsletter that makes you a little uncomfortable? Or a third, is there anything in this newsletter that's a new idea to you? They're general questions. So these things can be used in a variety of ways to help you and your parents. If I can be of further assistance to you, I want to be. I'd love to continue the conversation. I answer all email. And so if you write to drpatmccormack@gmail.com, I answer all email. In addition to that, my website is parentteachersupport.org. On that website, you will find over 125 articles that have already been published, and they are now on the website already formatted that you can use for yourself or deliver to parents in your community to help them. If there's any way that I could help you in the future, please feel free to be in touch, because I certainly would love to be with you and love to share more. And I'd love it to be face-to-face. So teachers, principals, administrators, catechists, whoever is part of this presentation, know that I will take you to prayer tonight. We have a holy hour with the Blessed Sacrament exposed, and I will be in advance praying for you that the Holy Spirit can work through you and feed you and touch you where you most need to be touched. So I thank you for your great attention. Goodbye and God bless you.